The difference between a player that knows how to play tank and take space effectively versus someone who doesn't is the difference between the easiest game of your life versus the hardest. And in this episode of Shottys Yap Session, we're going to talk about everything you need to know to be the best possible tank. And if you guys are new here, this is a series where I yap about a topic, so you can turn me on in the background while you do something else, or if you really want to, you can watch some mid-gameplay. Let's get right into it. Now, if you're curious, what does he know about tank? Not only do I play a ton of Doctor Strange because he's one of my favorite characters, especially for solo climbing, but up to this point, I've coached over 100 Marvel Rivals players, and one of them was actually a Doctor Strange player. And I don't know if I can use his name because I haven't asked him or anything. I actually have a coaching session with him tomorrow, or I guess today by the time the video comes out. But he was Grandmaster 3 when I met him, and in about a month's time and 3 coaching sessions, he just sent me a screenshot the other day of him hitting Eternity. Now let's get into some of the stuff I taught him. Tanking is, in my opinion, besides healing, way more important than everything else. Even like healing is way easier with a good tank because tanks are just everything in this game. Most people, when they're losing because of their tank, they don't even realize they're losing because of the tank. Because most people don't really understand how much easier the game feels when you have a good tank. And let me give you an example. Have you ever been playing and let's say you're a dive character, and every time you go in, everyone dies? Magically. It seems like everyone on the enemy team always dies when you go in, but then you play exactly the same in the next match and nothing dies. 9 times out of 10, that's because of your tank. Now, of course, there's some niche to it. It's like, well, you could have just been facing a different team comp and they have anti-dive or anti-this. But in general, a good tank lets you be aggressive. A good tank lets you take control of the match. And a good tank completely dictates the flow of a match. Everyone asks me, how do you take space or make a space-taking guide? And when I was coaching, I had a VOD where I played Doctor Strange. And I think I went 19-0 and we won that match. And I started showing it to everybody I coached because it was such a good example of how to take space without just face tanking everything. Because everyone thinks taking space is, let me run at them like a gorilla and take space with my face. But taking space can just be walking at them or walking where they want to go. And what I mean is, most people in this game, especially before like Grandmaster, they will back up just because you went forward. A lot of it is just ebb and flow. It's push or be pushed 90% of the time. This game is push or be pushed. If you guys are getting trapped in your spawn and you feel like you can't get through or anything like that, if you just hold W, I bet the enemy team will move back. Now, if they have, let's say, a Winter Soldier, Squirrel Girl, Punisher with his shotgun, Doctor Strange main tank, you might not be able to push forward. But most people don't have that. Most of the time, you're allowed to hold W, but our fear of being punished or our previous experiences of being punished makes us not do it. Makes us sit in the back, makes us stay back, makes us run away. Now, I started rambling about space, but before we get fully into that, there are 2 main kinds of tanks. Main tank and off tank. When we talk about main tank, you can think of Doctor Strange or Magneto. Those are the ones that it's much easier to take space and push with. And it's usually their job to take space and push. While off tanks are the ones to help somebody push or help take space. And they often are the ones that peel for the team or defend the backline and stuff like that. But when you're solo tanking, you have to do both. And when you're solo queuing, you have to decide which one you're supposed to be doing. Because I can't tell you how many times I've seen an off tank playing the main tank role because they just don't know what they're doing. They, like, the amount of times Hulk has not peeled for our backline, even though he has his gamma shield to save all of their lives, and I've had to do it as, let's say, Doctor Strange or whatever, is insane, which is fine, right? You gotta do what you gotta do. A lot of people try to play this game like, well, actually, it's not my job to do this. But if you're solo queuing, everything's your job. That's just the way it goes. You gotta play, you gotta figure it out, you gotta do something about it. Bronze, the way you have to play compared to platinum, is not the same. But most people try to play it the way they hear in a YouTube video. And most YouTubers say, oh, well, this is how you're supposed to do it. You have to do it like this. Just like positioning guides. One of my older positioning yap sessions was about how most positioning guys tell you to do high ground or position off angles like this or that or whatever. But it's impossible. If you've ever played below diamond, you know 90% of the supports do not look up. So if you're playing Iron Man, Johnny, whatever his name is, Human Torch, anyone that flies or anyone that sits on high ground, like maybe your Punisher, you never get healed. You have to play around health packs. There's no other choice. And actually, when I coach people, one of the number one things I teach them is stop playing like you have a team. If you have a team, that's a bonus. It's not expected. And when you're a solo tank or a main tank or an off tank or whatever, when I teach them which one they should be doing, should you be protecting your backline or should you be fighting their tank or should you be fighting their backline? What should you do? The general rule I give is what your other tank isn't doing. Now, if you're solo tanking, I'll get into that after, but if your tank is protecting the backline, even if he's a main tank and you're an off tank and you're supposed to be doing it, go dive the enemy backline. Go fight the enemy tank. Go do something else. Because, yes, ideally, you shouldn't be the one doing what you're doing, but it doesn't matter. Your teammate already did what they're doing. So instead of double stacking and giving up space maybe because you step off of the front line, go back to the front line and do what you got to do. Now, what if you're a solo tank? If you're a solo tank, more than anything, it's usually more of your teammate's job to deal with the backline. Because if you have 3 DPS or 3 healers, you probably should be able to deal with a dive. Now, if it's an entire tiny army, yes, absolutely help them. But most of the time, if they can't handle that, that's an issue. Maybe, though, you're not taking space correctly. Maybe that's why they can't deal with it. So how do you take space correctly? There's a few ways. First, we're going to go into solo tanking instead of having a dive tank with you or another tank with you. If you're solo tanking, a lot of it is running towards the enemy, using cover, doing damage, using health packs along the way, and different things like that. You want to meet the enemy where they're going or where they're going to be before they do, while taking the least amount of damage and doing the most to them. And this is also why I don't recommend a melee tank like Thor to be a solo tank. Because if you're Thor and you're trying to solo tank, there's something called neutral, which is when both teams are fighting to see who gets space. Think about when the enemy's on defense and you're on attack and they're holding you near your spawn door. That's neutral. You guys are dueling for space and neither of you really have an advantage, so you're trying to get the advantage before you push in. And Thor's neutral game is hard, because only his awakening can do range damage, and his hammer throw, I guess, but So you have to get in their face, and there's much more risk of you taking damage and die. And that's why I recommend most people to play a ranged tank as the solo tank. But even if you don't, your goal is get closer to the enemy, and not just how everyone else does it. I've seen so many people that say, oh, well, I'm trying to take space. Meanwhile, the VOD that I'm looking at, they're holding W at them, trying to sniff them with their face. Nowhere in taking space it said, beat them with your head. When you're taking space, yes, walk forward, push up, hold W, but you need to have a reason for the enemy team not to kill you for free. Now, whether that be a wall to the left or right of you that you use as cover as you walk forward, or you hug the wall as you run up to minimize how many people can see you, it has to be something. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. Like I said, using a wall, hugging a wall so people can't see you, and another one, using your shield. Oh my God. Taking space is not shielding everything. Most people use a shield like we're playing Reinhardt from Overwatch. And I think this is actually a lower elo Reinhardt thing because I was lower elo in Overwatch when I used to play. I used to play it on console, Xbox, and I think I was peak like 2800, 2900, which is plat. It's high plat, but it's platinum. And people shield the way I used to. Instead of doing damage, we're just holding the shield, praying that our teammates will kill everything. Instead, the way I want you to use your shield, if you're a shield character, is as a second health bar for you, or to help your team. And no, your team does not need as much help as you think they do. It'll be much more help for you to hit the enemy instead of looking at them with your shield. Now, if you have 2 tanks, it gets much easier to take space. Because with 1 tank, I mean, who else do they have to shoot except for you? It's really easy to kill you because they're like, wow, look, a free kill, because it's only you. But with a second tank, you guys can make it much harder for the enemy team. And how do you do that? One of you is going to do the exact same thing. You're just going to hold W at them, take space, use cover. The other one is going to make it as hard as possible for the enemy team to do their job. Now, an example of this would be Thor, Venom, Hulk can do it. Groot kind of can do it with his walls. But the main goal is your healers, their only job is heal you. The enemy's healers, their job, you want it to be, oh my God, here's Venom. Oh my God, here's Black Panther. Oh my God, a Groot wall, someone break it. And make it as hard for them to take space as possible. That's your number one goal. So as an off tank, you can do this by diving the healers. You can do this by, let's say you're Thor and you knock them out of place. One thing I love to do as Thor is when I'm on defense and I captured a point or something like King of the Hill, I'll sit behind the wall of the main choke while my main tank does damage and baits them in. And as soon as their main tank walks through the choke, I shoulder charge him into my whole team. And then I body block him by standing in front of him and standing between him and his healers, making it as hard as possible for him to get healing. And even if I don't hit him past that, I may not have done 1,000 damage to him, but I got that kill for us. Now, since I yapped a little bit in this video, which it is in the name, to summarize, if you're a tank, it's push or be pushed. You have to be either very confident or a little stupid to play tank correctly, and usually a bit of both. You have to play like the enemy team's garbage and you're just here to destroy them. Like, you know what? I'm going to walk up here and there's nothing you're going to do about it. You want to run towards the enemy team using cover along the way. Then, if you guys meet up face to face and they're not backing down, use cover, poke, do damage, and try to force them back without using your face, right? You don't want to just take 10,000 damage. And when you're a tank, there's two main relationships you should have with damage. Either you're minimizing it so that your healers don't have to heal bot you the whole game, or you're taking it so that your healers can get their ultimates quick. Because a lot of this game, especially at higher ranks, becomes healer ultimates. With good healer ultimate usage, you're unkillable most of the game. So a lot of the game becomes who has it first, who cycles it better, and that decides who wins. And that's also why having a bad tank is often confused with bad DPS or bad healers. I've had so many games, especially playing DPS, where my tank does not know how to position. He's taking space, but he's doing it with his skull. And because of this, my healers have to heal bot him the entire game. And they end the game with 40,000 healing each, and me and the other DPS will both end the game with 10 deaths. Meanwhile, everyone else has 5, if that. And it's instantly, you guys suck, it was your fault. Meanwhile, we couldn't get our job done because he was doing his job incorrectly. He thought he was doing it correctly, and it caused a misunderstanding in the game because most people don't understand how this game works. A lot of the time, this is people's first hero shooter or first shooter game in a long time. And that's also why you'll see people talk about, oh, stop leaving point. On King of the Hill, the amount of times I've dealt with people sitting on point the entire game instead of ever leaving it, and they all say, back up, we need to back up. It's insane. Now, the best way I can explain it to you is, their enemy tank has to push to get to point. Why would we start fighting them when they're 95% of the way to point compared to fighting them at 50%, slowly backing up and slowly giving them space until they reach 95 and then hard fighting them? Because if you guys have ever lost a game by 5 seconds or 1 OT, it probably could have been avoided if your tank was better or if any of you were more aggressive. And what I mean by that is that 50%, it doesn't mean you have to kill anybody. It doesn't mean you have to do anything except for stand there and do a little damage, because people will not push up just because you're there. Even if you're full health, even if you're half health, even if you've done no damage, people will run away most of the time just because you're there. So just being there makes space. Just being there creates presence. Just being there wins games. So even if you're uncomfortable with, let's say, pushing halfway to the enemy spawn to fight them, at least stand a little bit forward. Because even if your DPS is wrong, even if your healers are wrong for pushing up, you have to go with them. Because if you don't, they're going to go in anyways. They're going to die for free when you could have went with them and gave them a better chance of winning. And maybe even won. That's why if you play Psylocke or anything, your gameplay will be almost completely dependent on how good your tank is, unless you're mechanically skilled or good at playing off angles. Because most people have no clue how to push when there's no pressure. And most of the time, it's not even possible to push without pressure. And that's why a tank is so important. Another thing about tanking is, and I do this a lot on Doctor Strange, use your abilities to make it easy for your supports. And what I mean is, on Doctor Strange, I'll jump up in the air with my shift ability and hold my shield while I'm in there and just sit there so my healers can see me. As soon as I get healed, then I drop back down. Most people don't think about what they look like to their healers. And if you don't, that's how you get those moments where, guys, why aren't you healing me? Guys, why aren't you healing me? Meanwhile, there's 17 brick walls between you and the support. It's like, let me activate my X-ray healing. Like, bro, what was I supposed to do? Was I supposed to just fly over there? Anyways, if you guys like free stuff, go down to the description and get an entire month of free coaching with Gosu Academy. And after that, check out this 44-minute video of pure knowledge that I learned from coaching over 100 players in Marvel Rivals. I love you guys. Have a good one. God bless you.